Welcome to another episode of the Trivia Power Hour Gaming, the show where we look at gaming secrets, Easter eggs, facts, and trivia you want to know about. If you know of any more trivia, or have a game, series, or developer you want me to cover in the future, let me know in the comments, like the video, and consider subscribing. Also, make sure to stick around to the end, for I'll announce what the focus of the next episode will be. But, for now, let's get right into the trivia. Today, we're looking at one of the most well-known, long-running, and influential JRPG franchises in history, Final Fantasy. Specifically, to celebrate the Shadowbringers expansion, the enduring MMO Final Fantasy XIV. Final Fantasy XIV's origins can be traced all the way back to late 2004, when it was under the codename Rapture, and was being directed by Nobuaki Komodo and produced by Hiromichi Tanaka. Komodo had previously been the event planner on Final Fantasy IX and the director of 11, while Tanaka was one of the original founders of Square and played various roles across all the early Final Fantasy titles, as well as other series such as Secret of Mana, Xenogears, and Chrono Cross. The game's initial release was so poorly received, getting a 49 critical review on Metacritic, Yoichi Wada, the president of Square Enix at the time, personally issued a formal apology to fans, as well as announced Komodo's demotion to lead designer and complete removal of Tanaka from the project. The game was so buggy and unstable that servers supposedly crashed up to 400 times per day. This paved the way for Naoki Yoshida, director of 3 Dragon Quest games and planner-chief for the MMO Dragon Quest X, to come in as both director and producer. Yoshida identified 3 reasons as to why the original Final Fantasy XIV was a failure. First was the team had an unhealthy obsession with graphical quality. As an example, a single flower pot in that version of the game contained over 1,000 polygons and 150 lines of shader code, an equivalent number to resources as a player character. That led to many cuts being made in order to maintain that level of graphics, such as limiting the number of players that appear on screen at any time to just 20, which goes against one of the fundamental reasons people play MMOs in the first place. Second was his team's lack of knowledge and experience about developing a successful MMO. He commented on how, due to how much time and resources are required to create an MMO, not many Japanese teams make them, and thus they are less familiar with the genre as a whole. Apparently, Square was very strict on implementing policies that were successful in the PS2 era. The final reason was that Square believed any problem that came up could just be patched later. However, when the game had flaws at the fundamental level, that proved not to be true. So, in order to save Final Fantasy XIV, Yoshida knew he would have to rebuild the game from scratch, but at the same time keep producing content for the existing version. When A Realm Reborn launched, Yoshida claimed it was the first MMO to ever be rebuilt and relaunched. He and his team managed to build this completely new version of the game while supporting and adding to the old one, all in under 3 years. As a comparison, it's common for MMOs to be developed for 5 years according to Yoshida. A player-created event from the 1.0 version of the game was made canon and referenced in the actual story of the game when the player starts the questline searching for the airship Enterprise. Father Iluid mentions that it had gotten popular after the Calamity, similar to another story called The Great Gubu Wall of Ul'dah. This event took place near the end of 1.0, where players summon their Gubu mounts to create a wall around the entrance of Ul'dah to keep monsters from entering. Final Fantasy XIV's development had a strange history of timing releases close to the biggest competition in the MMO market, World of Warcraft. The original 1.0 version was thought to be rushed out to beat the Cataclysm expansion for WoW. The relaunch ended up happening on March 24, 2013, just 1 month before the Siege of Orgrimmar patch for the Mists of Pandaria expansion. Heaven's Word did hit when not much of note was happening in WoW, but patch 3.0 and WoW patch 6.2 released on the exact same date of June 23, 2015. We're still not done though, because Stormblood, which came out on June 20th, 2017, was just one day after WoW's 7.03 patch. By this point, WoW might have taken notice of the popularity 14 was getting, but certainly saw the negative reception their Battle for Azeroth expansion was getting. So, after Shadowbringers was announced, WoW scheduled the 8.2 patch, Rise of Asura, to come out on June 25th, which was 3 days before the early access debut of Shadowbringers. One seemingly small naming issue came up when Labyrinth of the Ancients and Circus Tower were being added to the game. The developers wanted to keep the dungeons faithful to Final Fantasy III, and so wanted to name the boss of the dungeon Titan. However, there already existed a primal named Titan. The Japanese team was able to get away with using the same name by using different characters that made a slight change in pronunciation. For other languages, however, they had to get permission to use a new name, Acheron, which still fit as it was the name of one of the Titan's palette swaps in Final Fantasy III. That solution worked out well until patch 2.3 was about to come out. Fast forward to a month before patch 2.3. We get a list of these enemies slated to appear in the second leg of the Crystal Tower. And what do we see? Michael Koji Fox, the English localization lead, said, "For those of you who don't read katakana, let me give you a hint. It's Acheron." It turns out the team simply forgot that name was used in other languages, and, since the designs were so close to completion, and how important Acheron was in that part of the tower, they wouldn't be changing it. In the end, for those keeping up, Titan was first changed to Acheron, but had to be changed again to Phlegethon in the Labyrinth of the Ancients, and Acheron in the Circus Tower became the new Acheron as it is in the Japanese version. To make the name change make a little sense in-game, and poke a little fun at the situation, an NPC references the name change by stating that Acheron was the mistranslated, and the name was fixed by the research team. Players of the English version of the game probably noticed a giant change in the voice cast that none of the other languages experienced. When Heavensward came out, the recording studios moved from being based in Los Angeles to a London studio, where new local actors were brought in. A few of the major characters affected were, and apologies if I mispronounce any of these, Alphinaud, Cid, Urianger, Tataru, Raubon, and Ilberd. The only character to be on their third actor is Yuguri, who was replaced by Sean Blake when Heavensward came out. In an incredibly tragic event, Blake was the victim of a murder just after the 3.1 patch came out. Out of respect for Blake, the character was mostly absent until the case was closed and a new actor was brought in patch 3.5. Now, because there are way too many to go over all of them, here are a few references to other games found in Final Fantasy XIV. The achievement for completing the Dragoon quest is called Dragoon Age, and another quest is called Double Dragoon. One of Jahantel's lines in the Bard quest is, "You would know why I truly abandoned the battlefield and became a bard? That I took an arrow to the knee is what most folk believe." There are Chain of Fates in the Dravanian hinterlands with names like Metal Gear's Rising, Metal Gear's Revengeance, and Metal Gear's Revengeance 2. A conversation in the Paladin questline is, "What? What is this? Blood? I hope this is not Soakzaggle's blood." I could have filled an entire episode just going over references Final Fantasy XIV has to other movies, TV shows, books, plays, and music, so I encourage you to share your favorites in the comments if you have any. As I mentioned near the beginning of the episode, Final Fantasy XIV's development started a very long time before it actually released, but it was also actually shown in 2005, though it was only referred to as an upcoming multiplayer project, and the city shown wasn't even included in the initial release. However, that same city made a comeback in the Shadowbringers expansion almost 15 years later. As popular as Final Fantasy XIV has become, people may assume it was a decision made by Square or Sony, not to put the game on the Xbox 360 or the Xbox One, but it turns out it was Microsoft who killed the development of that version. Back in 2010, Microsoft was in a very different place than they are today, and were unwilling to allow cross-platform play, which would have meant Square would need to create and maintain a separate version just for Xbox players. Tanaka, still producer at that time, stated that, "If we have to make a 360 version separately, that means that's just going to cost more manpower and that can bring delays to the game. So we just want to stick to our MMO design of the same game on the same servers." This is almost the opposite of how Microsoft acts today, completely embracing cross-platform play, while Sony has been somewhat more reserved about allowing it. Yoshida spoke about a wide range of things during interviews at E3 this year, with a lot of interesting points of conversation. When asked if there were any Western games or game creators he would like to work with, he answered, Diablo and World of Warcraft. Simply put, I'm a big fan of Blizzard. If I'm given the chance to be creative director on, say, a new Diablo or Diablo 4, I would drop everything at Square Enix and move over to Blizzard. He also said that he heard one of the lead developers for The Witcher 3 played Final Fantasy XIV, and how they would like to start a conversation with them about some sort of collaboration in the future. And what better way to end this episode than with one of Yoshida and the 14 team's favorite places to eat in America, Panda Express. I love it. I feel that my palate is not very high class. I love flavors that are very strong, something that is not complicated, something that is very easy to grasp, and cheap. Thanks for watching this episode of the Trivia Power Hour Gaming. Next episode, we'll be taking a look at the Dragon Quest series, so subscribe to make sure you don't miss it. In the meantime, you can check out some of my other videos you may have missed, for even more gaming trivia I know you'll like.